recording started. So we are at Sage Day 117 in Lepech, a very famous city near the Bassin d'Arcachon in France. And we welcome Matthias Köppe to teach us about the new SageMath development way using GitHub. Please, Matthias, let's go.
All right. Hi, everyone. I read your SageDays page. This looked very interesting. In particular, I followed your advice to bring binoculars. I've got them here. Okay, so I'll get started. So here's my plan. I want to show you the new front page that we have. It's the Sage repository, SageMath Sage. Superficially looks the same as it was before, but now we have changed about a message here. We are open for issues and pull requests, and in fact, so my contribution has been to work with a team that converts track tickets to issues. In this way, we have preserved the long history of the Sage project. We have about 30,000 closed issues and about 5,000 open issues that were converted from track tickets, reaching back to 2006. And I'll walk you through a little bit what is there, and also to identify some action items that would be good to take care of in the next few days to make this experience best for in particular new developers who may want to join the project now that we have resolved this friction that was in the way of joining Sage by having this old ancient-looking system track and by replacing it by GitHub. So, all right. So let me go back to the front page and let me point out a few things. So here's some about box. What else do we see? We see the a pointer to the README. There are the stars. So I must say we have lost our stars in the migration process. So this is a brand new repository in our organization, and this means hands-on activity. If you haven't already, star our new repository now. So what else is to be seen here? We have in the sidebar we have the releases. So releases have been migrated from the old Sage repository, and so this doesn't have full coverage, but it has the releases since 9.1 and then some sporadic ones. So that's something, if you're interested in preserving history, we may want to backfill this with our release information from the past with change logs and so on. Okay, so and then we will see we have the tabs in the GitHub repository page. Code is the default, and so we see overview of the Git tree, and we have issues. I've already clicked on this one, and then we have pull requests that was empty at the time of writing my notes, but I see it has already been filled, so you all over there are 9 hours ahead of me on all of this. So then there are a few more things I see here. Discussions, and I'm not sure if you can see this, but this is a GitHub feature that we may want to use in the future. I think it's not activated yet, but this is something very nice, something that can structure larger discussions that do not fit onto one issue or pull request. And this can also be a place for support and so on. We have a number of systems from long ago that serve this similar function, but this is something that we can consider. Okay, actions. This is where various things happen. So this is where workflows run that do linting and test building and documentation building and so on. Also portability tests when a release is made. So you'll see a number of these things are running already. And so you can see here the overview. If you're wondering why your ticket is not, so your issue or your pull request is not being tested yet, you can look into actions, and if there's a long queue of jobs that are waiting, that's why. Okay, and then finally we have the wiki. The wiki doesn't have a nice front page yet. It only says new wiki, but on the sidebar you can see there's a bunch of converted pages. Not all of them are great looking. This is all just converted as is from the track wiki. This shouldn't be confused with our wiki, SageMath.org. This one has not been migrated, so we have migrated the track wiki, and so this includes, for example, the most recent release tours. So if you want to contribute to the release tour of the upcoming 9.8, that is this is the place where you edit it. And so these wikis on GitHub, they are backed by Git repositories, and so you can do one of two things. You can either edit it here on the website, or you can just clone this. So this is just like the URL for Sage, but with a .wiki in between. So sage.wiki.git, and one can just clone this locally. This is all in the form of markdown files. It's very simple, then one can push again. All right. And then finally, as entry points to Sage development, we have several top-level files. So that's if we go back to code, so one that is displayed here is the README. It's Markdown, and there are a few more files, and we need to find ways of maybe advertising them better. And so there's the contributing MD, which tells us, basically it's an invitation to Sage development, contributing to Sage, and so on. So that's kind of the front page for development, and so we may want to work on that to get the point across that we want to make. And finally, there's code of conduct. It's in the repository, so this is another file, so there we go. I have prepared a few hands-on activities that would be great to take care of in the course of this week. We still have lots of links to the old track server from various pages. Yeah, so one is our main page, SageMath.org, and other places are our documentation. So the Sphinx documentation has all these links to track, and so we should fix all of them so that they now point to GitHub issues. And as I mentioned already, so we should find a way to gain acclaim in the GitHub world. So let's tell all of our friends to start this repository. Okay, so next I'll later on share my notes as well, and then you can link, you can follow these links. They are backed by a repository that has been used to organize our migration from track. So I'll take you there. So this repository is called SageMath track to GitHub, and so this collects various tasks that still need to be done now that the migration of the track tickets has been done. So here, for example, that's the one that corresponds to what I just said. Replace links to track on the Sage website, and yeah, help's wanted on this one. So this can be done by pull requests to our website repository, and so there are a bunch of other things. Some of the things that I will want to take care of, but there are a bunch of others where help is very welcome. Okay, so now I'll walk you through the format of the issues that are on SageMath Sage that we have migrated from the tickets. And what I'm going to do is I'll bring up this page. So this is a page that shows you the transition guide from track. And so we can also make that hands-on activity. So maybe I should put this link in the public chat. So this is the master document that basically guides you through the process, and I will do some steps here live. So let's see. So one needs access to the. You want to make contributions. Then one somehow needs access to GitHub, and so on the old track, it was like this. There was one Git server, and you needed write access to that in order to contribute branches. And so this model has changed now with GitHub. We still use a centralized process, but everything, instead of going through branches on a central repository, goes through pull requests to that central repository that is already here on the screen. So this changes the needs for authentication a bit. Contributors will of course need a GitHub account, and then the next step is to create a fork of our main repository, and some of us may already have a fork of the old repository. I might have one, and the best idea is to actually take this old fork and rename and archive it. I'll do this right now here. This is what I recommend, because the fork relationships between repository on GitHub, they cannot be manipulated. This is an internal attribute of the repositories, and it is best that your fork of Sage is known as a fork of our main repository. That makes a lot of these workflows easier to do. So let me just do this. I'll name my repository to Sage Archive current day 2023-0206. I rename it, then there are probably some warnings. Oh no, no warnings. So I will also archive this repository just so I remember I shouldn't use it anymore. And so here just copy paste this one, I archive it, so now I know I shouldn't touch it anymore. If there were any branches on there that were valuable, I can later on just push them to the new fork. Okay, so let's go back to this one here, and so we can go to the top and push the fork button, and so here owner, so I'm making this something in my personal account, and so since I just freed the name Sage, I can now reuse this name. And so this description is copied from the original main repository of SageMath, so let me just change it, so that nobody gets confused. Personal fork of the SageMath main repository. And so you have some options here. Copy the develop branch only. Doesn't matter so much because we only have two branches on our GitHub repository. We have develop and master, and the current plan is to basically keep it like this, only two branches. So we won't have the situation like on the track server where we've got thousands of those branches that belong to individual contributions. Rather, this is managed by GitHub pull requests, so there are special Git refs that correspond to the heads of pull request branches, and we'll get to this later. Okay, so I create the fork. It should only take a few seconds, as it claims, and there we go. Okay, so I have now this repository, Köppe Sage, and we can now see that we update our remotes. I'm showing you what to do when you want to reuse the clone of the repository that you use for development. So to set it up so that it will talk to the new repositories that we are manipulating now. So let's take a look at what I have. Is the font big enough? Is this okay? So I type git remote -v, and it's telling me all the remotes that I have. You might have fewer or more, and you see that I have already created an upstream remote, and this one is pointing to our new repository. If you don't have that yet, you would create it using this command, git remote add upstream, and then the URL which you can copy paste from here. You can click on a code, and then you can copy this URL. So I'm doing everything in this demonstration here on the command line, so with the most basic tools. GitHub has a lot of integration, so for example, if you use VS Code and that is highly recommended from my side, if you want to explore modern development tools, VS Code is a great entry point and provides excellent integration, not just for Git, but specifically for GitHub and the associated collaboration workflows. So this is worth checking out. We have this, and then we have another reserved name, so according to tradition and best practices, and that is called origin. So origin is supposed to be the remote that corresponds to your personal fork of the repository. Yeah, so there we have two repositories. One is upstream, and the other one is origin. That is yours. And so let's see what I need to do in order to repair what I have here. Okay, so I have here already a remote that points to what used to be my personal clone, and so my personal fork, and this is what I called GitHub and my username, and so this is now pointing to the wrong thing, and so I will just update these references to point to the correct repository. So and so I just renamed it. So let me go back there, and should be somewhere in the repositories. Okay, there it is. It's the one I just renamed, and we can push code, copy this one, and now I will change the URL that is associated with this name of the remote. So git remote help tells me how to do this. So I can do, it's a bit unfortunate how this is formatted. So I can do git remote set URL, the name of the remote, and then the copy pasted URL. And so if I use git remote -v again, we can now see that the URL has changed, and I can just see if this works. Git fetch GitHub and Köppe, and something happened. Yeah, so there's some releases there that I created for CI purposes. So, but we no longer have we don't have an origin repository, and so I'm going to create this one. And as I said, this should correspond to the newly created fork. So let me go there. And where was it? Here it is. So I copy the URL, and I go here. Let me make the screen a bit smaller so that this shows in the other window also. So I would say git remote add origin now. So that's a standard name for that remote, and we have this. And so now I can do git remote fetch origin. No, that was wrong. Git fetch origin, and there we go. Yeah, so it's able to access it, and that's basically all that we need. So there's some details here. I am using HTTPS for all access here. It is also possible with GitHub to use SSH. It's another way of doing it. You can find all the details on the GitHub documentation pages. The documentation there is excellent and walks you through step by step. Okay, yeah, so we also have here the quick start if you want to abandon everything that you have on your computer and start with a fresh clone. Can also do that, and so here are the instructions to do so. Okay, so now to summarize, I have remotes origin and upstream, And finally, we also want to add a remote in order to access all the old branches that are still associated with migrated tickets, because we may want to pick up work from one of the existing track branches. And so this is how it works. Yeah, so we used to use the remote name track, and I have it here, and it would point to something like this. Yeah, so there would be the Git protocol access to track SageMath.org, and there would be a push, and the Git one would still work at the moment, I believe, but we can just change this as well. So so here the instructions point to creating that new track remote, but I'm using the same URL from here so what we have here is the repository Sage track mirror. This used to be a live mirror of the track repository, so push mirror updated on every push to the track Git repository, and so this now has been archived, so it's read-only, so preserves the history of the 10,000s of branches that are attached to track tickets, closed or open, everything, and we are going to set the URL here of my existing track remote to that one, and we can verify using git remote -v that this one has been set. Yeah, so the push URL won't work either way, so let me not change it right now. So and now let's take a look what the procedure looks like. So basically I want to show you a comparison between a converted track ticket and the result of the conversion, and that we'll do by picking one of my favorite tickets, no issues, and why don't we say this one here is my favorite issue, and so let me point out a few things. So you see here that the ticket box has been converted to an issue description, and so there's always a link to the original track ticket. Track is still there, it's read only, so if you have any doubt that information may have been lost in the migration, then you can always verify what the original looked like, and a little bit slow at the moment. And so we can compare. Yeah, so on track we used to have this ticket box with various attributes. On GitHub now things are a little bit less structured. Yeah, so it's more free form. So the migration has set a particular way that it converts all of these things and tries to faithfully represent what was entered on the track side, and let's just do this. So here's a description. All these links are pointing to the corresponding issues. So this was was major work by the team to get all of these conversions from various generations of track right, so all of these links should work. So you see the CC has been converted to at mentions. You should be aware that it doesn't necessarily work that you automatically get notifications. There's something that you may want to adjust by hand. Basically search for yourself on GitHub in the repository, look for your contributions, and then decide what issues you want to follow and so on. Okay, so the old component attribute has been converted, and we have some very measured adjustments to those components. There are a few that we decided do not make sense as components, but rather as free-form labels. For example, component refactoring is translated to just label refactoring, so it characterizes the nature of this ticket. Yeah, so is it a bug? Is it an enhancement? Is it a new feature? Or does it do refactoring work? And so this is orthogonal to, let's say, the mathematical area that is touched by these changes. So this is no longer a component after the migration, but it's rather a label in the same category as enhancement, which used to be ticket type. So we add here enhancement or defect, and these are now mapped to the label enhancement and label bug. And these things are marked with the prefix T. Why do we use these prefixes? It assists in selecting labels when you want to add a label to an issue or pull request, or when you want to filter them in the issue overview. And so here you can see what is available. We have the labels that start with C as a component, and so these are basically, except for tiny consolidations, the components that were on track. So there were a few, so track covered a long history, going back to 2006, and there were a number of changes of those component names over time, and so we have consolidated them. So there might be some slight inaccuracies in doing so, and because of that we have decided to preserve the original component also as text here in the ticket box. So this is one of the things that will not be present on new issues that you will open, but for new issues the labels do all of the job. Okay. So, and I was talking about the components here. Then we have priorities. So these are the old priority attributes here, ranging from trivial to blocker, and so they are given here in shades of warm red, orangish colors, and so for easy selection they are also numbered. So 1 is the first priority, and so if you just type 1, you get this as the unique one in the long list of labels. And so that's a general situation in GitHub. You have excellent search and completion. So, for example, if I want to look for group theory, it's probably enough if I type oop and so on. Yeah, so and finally, to scroll to the bottom of this list, you see the resolution, status, and type labels. So you see here in light gray various flavors of tickets closed or to be closed, and so here in yellow and green we have status. So the yellow ones are things that need action by a developer or by a reporter, and the bright green one is the one that alerts us that a reviewer is needed, and the light green one, things get more muted in color when they're less important, and for most people, if there's already a positive review, there's no more need for action. So it's then only the release manager would touch that ticket, and the release manager can just search for the positive review tickets. So there's no need to visually have this one to be so prominent. So then these gray and red ones, it's a darker gray. These are the type labels. So they do not talk about the topical area of a pull request or issue, but rather the character of it. So we have enhancements, we have feature. So feature is converted from the old special milestone Sage feature. And then we have a few that were either keywords or components, and so we have consolidated these a little bit. Bug has this form of red, so it's to be distinguished from the blocker red, but it's has again a kind of a warning color. And then finally we have a kind of an extravagant color for the wishlist items. So the wishlist items are those they're defined by the fact that there exists one person in the world who would be happier if this ticket got done. And so finally there's pending. So this is how we convert the old special milestone Sage pending. So these are issues, tickets that have been waiting for a long time for action, and so this one is it's the friendly needs help. So the standard needs help color on GitHub. Okay, so let me go back to the this issue. I have talked about the labels. So you see there are events. So these are called issue events. When labels or milestones and things like this are added, you will see them here in the history of the issue or pull request. We have in Sage this tradition of using full names of authors and reviewers. So this is something that will benefit from a discussion because this is not standard practice on GitHub. Oftentimes just the username. Often just the usernames are used, and so there's a tiny bit of like impedance mismatch. So we on top of, let's say, the built-in review mechanisms in GitHub that we'll go over shortly, we have this additional metadata, and right now, as I said, it's this whole thing is a little bit more free format. We have converted this just to these lines author, and then in boldface the names. And if we keep this transition, if we keep this tradition, then this line would still go now on pull request. Yeah, so issues going forward will not have authors, but pull requests will. And so we would add a line like this to the issue description. So what appears here as the first comment, or if it is necessary because of permissions further down in any of the other comments. And so the idea would be, if you want to change authors, like I did here in this converted one, yeah, so this one here is converted from track, then we can also put lines like this, author and then new authors on issue comments. Okay. All right. So the converted issues, they also may have a branch and or commit line. So these are all links. They are pointing to the Sage track mirror. So I can click that, and it takes me to Sage track mirror. So you see here notice that it's been archived. So it is not possible to continue just pushing to that branch, right? So this it is there, yeah, so to preserve the history up until the migration day. And so what we can do here is we can look at the commits that make up this branch, and it shows you the diff, and so we can do various things with this. You will find that all of this is wildly more functional and friendly than what we used to have on track, and so that's what we have here. So here you see we have the needs review label that corresponds to the old ticket status, and there we go. No, so that's what this looks like. I'll break here briefly for questions. Type in the chat if you have any questions. I'll just continue. So if you do the comparison, you'll see that we have done our very best in the team to convert all aspects of the tickets to issues, and I'll just briefly say what has not been preserved. So we do preserve changes to the ticket description. These show up as issue comments that show you the diff between the old description and the new description. However, edits to ticket comments are not represented. So we only have the latest version of each comment. And the second thing is we have lost a bunch of ticket attachments, those that were greater than 25 MB. So there were a few instances, and mostly I am the guilty party, of attaching a huge tarball for some upstream packages directly to the track ticket, and those have been dropped, but those relevant ones are all available on our Miro server, and also we have lost one very long compressed log file. So that's a complete list, and there in the repository track to GitHub, that's the one that I showed you here. We have also noted any still necessary fix-ups of other kind that need to be done. So my point about so the question in the chat. Thank you. Do we intend on making new issues on GitHub look like migrated track tickets? My suggestion is that we use the format of migrated issues only as a starting point, but not dogma for the future format, but this will naturally evolve. So here are a few things that we can drop. So I already mentioned component, which is completely replaced by labels. Keywords is most likely not necessary. So keywords are kind of a relic of times before proper full text search, and probably we can just put necessary information in full text form, in free form in the ticket, in the issue description, and so here's I have noted again the thing about the full names of reviewers and authors. Okay. So what I wanted to show you is a little bit a demo how to do a few things, such as how do we start a new pull request. And so there are several situations that are best distinguished. If we want to open a new pull request, so you have the situation that you've just created a branch locally. It doesn't address anything that anyone has reported, not a bug, not a previously wished for feature, but it's just something that you created. Then there is no need to actually open an issue for it. You can directly open a pull request. And the workflow goes like this. You can just push to origin, and then so origin is your personal fork of our repository, and then when you push it, you get a message from the server that offers you a link for opening a PR. Also various other places in the web interface how you can open a PR. So there's you can sit on the branch, and then you can hit the button, the green button called contribute, and PRs, there's a way to either open it in its default form, which is kind of ready for review, and however you can also make it a draft PR, so that means it's not ready for review. And so you see that there is still a kind of duplication with our system of status labels, and so this is something that will have to be figured out, how we resolve this duplication and the concern that basically these two representations of status may get out of sync. So this is something that the developer community will have to sort out. There's probably a way to use bots to help with that. So we can create GitHub actions that do some syncing of the status labels and so on. So this is one of the tasks that we have up here on the repository that coordinates the migration, and we might get to there. So if you already have a track ticket and you want to push a branch that addresses that issue, so track ticket has been converted to the issue, and so there are again two subcases. Either there is already a branch or there isn't. So if you are starting with a brand new branch, we just we push it to origin to open a pull request against the upstream repository, and then you will mention the issue that it closes using the magic words fixes issue number or closes issue number. And in this way it will be automatically backlinked. And so let me see if we already have that. Let's look at the existing pull requests, already 26 of them. So I don't really look at this one here. So there are automatic cross references. So here you see the magic comment fixes issue number, and so as soon as you type the hash sign, you have auto completion at hand, so you can search for open issues and so on, and so you can very quickly navigate to the correct issue number. That's a very convenient thing. So that's now what we can look at. Let's look at the linked issue. Because there you see the automatically created pingbacks. This one here. So this is a cross-reference that is automatically created by GitHub whenever the issue is mentioned somewhere. And so that is something that actually also works across repositories on GitHub. And so this is where there's a great potential for network effects with other repositories corresponding to upstream projects and downstream projects, so projects that Sage users develop, and so that's creates a web of these issues and fixes and so on that helps reduce the isolation of Sage in the Python development world. So it's something that we want to keep an eye on going forward. So what else have we got? So if there's already a branch linked to the issue, so we created a track remote linking to a Sage track mirror. We can just fetch the branch from there. We can make our changes on top. We can't push it back where it came from because that repository is archived, so read only. So instead you would just push it as a branch to your fork. So through origin, and this will again lead you to opening a PR. And then, just for clarity, it makes sense to edit, if you can, the issue description and remove the information about the old branch. This does not erase history because GitHub shows you on edited. So if you edit an issue description or a comment, it gives you a drop down here that says edited, and so you can access older versions of it. But it reduces kind of the noise if you remove the mention of the old branch, and also that issue may have been marked as needs review when there was already a branch, or needs work, and these things no longer have a purpose after you have attached a PR that takes place of this function of the migrated issue, and there we go. Okay, so and then I had hoped to show you a little bit how to add comments and do reviews and so on issues, but there are now lots of people already had a 9-hour head start in the Sage Days 117 group, so I'm sure I don't need to explain this anymore, so I'll be happy to answer any questions. This is where I stop.
So let's thank Matthias maybe. We have plenty of time for questions.
I have a question, Matthias. This is John Pomona.
Hi.
I couldn't add a label to a pull request or anything. I mean, I know how to add labels, but it wouldn't let me.
Yeah. So this is something that is still work in progress. This is one of these things that are marked here in this track to GitHub repository as a task, and so this is something that will need. So this permissions game, this is something that will need a discussion in the developer community right now, because I have invited hundreds of people to the GitHub organization SageMath. I have set the permissions to minimal, and so there are various mechanisms to add permissions, and so this is something that is described here. Teams is one mechanism, so we can have several tiers of contributors. So there certainly at least some labels should be changeable by just anyone. Also, certainly anyone who reports the bug should be able to put the bug label on it. And so other permissions, such as so on track we had the convention that basically anyone who has a track account can edit pretty much anything, so make changes to ticket descriptions and ticket attributes and so on. And now that so GitHub just recently made the announcement that they have now 100 million users, So that's quite a step up from our like thousands of users on track, and so probably we cannot give wide permissions to basically change everything and anything to the general public. I mean, GitHub does have a team that reacts quickly to abuse, spammers and other online abusers will certainly lose their GitHub accounts and therefore access. And so the question regarding reviewers, that's also one that needs to be sorted out. And I do not have a fixed solution for these questions, but there will have to be several tiers of developers. For example, basically experienced or trusted reviewers who should get the permission to, for example, make light edits to pull requests. That's a feature that exists on GitHub, and it is by default reserved to the role of maintainers, but fine-tuning of these things can be done using teams, and so this is something that needs a detailed discussion in the Sage developer community. I don't have the full answers on all of these questions.
Matthias, I have a question. Maybe there are others. So I'm not used with GitHub. I've never used it before in my life. So when I go from track to GitHub, track there was the tickets, and now there are the issues on one side and the pull requests. So my question is, can we have a pull request without an issue? Can we have an issue without the pull request?
That's right. That's right.
Like, if I want to contribute to Sage, can I just pull my branch? Then this, you say, automatically creates a pull request. Can it go into Sage without even any issue being created?
Yes.
And let me finish the question. It's if we have both, like what information should go in the pull request and what information should go in the issue, like without the data information.
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, pull requests can be opened in a standalone way, and that's in fact very typical workflow on GitHub. So basically, you develop something locally, you get your branch ready, you create the pull request, and then you put all information to the description of what it does and how it does that. You put it on the pull request. On the other hand, if you report a bug or you would like to plan a project or you just describe something that first needs discussion and then work can be done, you would create an issue that's just like a track ticket without an attached branch. And as soon as you are ready to attach a branch like you used to in track, you would open the pull request. You would link it by this mention fixes so and so, or just a plain mention. So sometimes there might be several pull requests that are needed to address one issue. In this case, they should just mention it without the magic word fixes or closes. It will still show up as a so there will be a backlink, but it will not automatically close the thing when the pull request is merged. However, if there's a one-to-one correspondence between the issue and the PR, then in the moment that it gets merged, by the release manager, then also the issue will be closed. So regarding what comments go where, I think it's pretty natural. So in the phase when there's no branch yet, of course things go to the issue. If you want to say that something is not a bug but a feature, that should probably go on the issue. If you do a review-like comment on a pull request, they should go on the pull request. And in fact, so I didn't have a chance to show it to the audience, but there's a nice structured way on GitHub pull requests, how reviewers come into play. So it's not just that people make comments, but you can there's a flow that takes reviewers through it. Reviewers can mark certain parts of the diff already as seen or as reviewed, and people can request changes, can comment directly on the diff, and so on. I recommend to play with it, figure it out, and so all of these things belong very naturally, and also induced by these helpful workflows on the pull request. And in fact, sometimes there might be several pull requests that try to fix the same bug. So that was something that was a little bit awkward on track before, because of this more or less one-to-one correspondence between track and attached branches. Sure, people could push branches just to track and then mention their name. That's happened sometimes. Sometimes there have been kind of competing branches, and then people would push over each other, and now basically can just go, and people can have simultaneous pull requests, and yeah, well, one of them in the end will hopefully be merged, and the others then can be closed as duplicate.
But that's a good question. If you have two pull requests about the same issue, where the discussion about which solution we should adopt will happen, for example?
I think this will develop organically. I don't think that's that's much of a concern. I don't think we need to set policy on this.
I have another question. So there are some friends of mine that are involved in Sage since a long time that have issues with creating a GitHub account.
I see.
Because it was bought by Microsoft a few years ago and so on.
I see. So let me first comment on the Microsoft situation. It has been when we had the discussion on the move to GitHub. It was people said that Microsoft has been a consistent and persistent enemy of open source, and this is false. There was a historical period under Steve Ballmer when Microsoft was openly hostile to open source, and in particular to the system of copyleft in the form of the general public license. This is a period of time that has long passed. Microsoft is one of the largest producers and participants in the open source ecosystem, and so there's of course the word FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's very closely related to to some of these hostile anti-free software players, but it belongs into the same category nowadays to pretend that Microsoft is opposed or hostile to open source. It is simply not true. If you don't believe me, then you just need to read industry publications of the past 10 years. The highest profile open source systems, VS Code, probably the top development environment is open source. GitHub has lots of is based on lots of components that have been released by Microsoft as open source and so on. So these reservations based on the image of an evil and hostile owner of GitHub, they are simply ill-informed.
Matthias, let me ask a more precise question. I don't want to open. I don't think it's the time now to open this political decision. My question is whether before on track it was recently possible with a GitHub account to suggest branches, without creating a track account. Would it be possible for that person to post a branch on some other server, or so that these people can still suggest branches, like pull requests somehow without the GitHub account? Is it possible?
I don't know.
Like
I don't know, and I'm not interested in this question.
Oh, you are not interested. Okay. No, it's an answer. But the question remains open. Okay.
More questions?
Don't have a lot of questions. Oh, yeah, there's a question by Eric. Yeah, if you speak loudly, that should be enough.
Matthias, this is Eric from Lyon. Thanks for the talk. I have a question about the positive review. So before we click on the positive review button, so now how can we set positive review on the application if there's a needs review button? What is the process? What are the permissions to do this?
Right. So that is another area where there's a kind of duplication and potential for things getting out of sync with GitHub. So GitHub has its own system for users to take a role as a reviewer. So this shows up on the pull requests in the sidebar. You can request reviews from people. People can add their reviews and so on. And so on the pull request, there is on the pull request. Therefore, there's a way to represent this in the form of PR attributes. So and furthermore, there are ways to automate merging processes on GitHub that basically say if a ticket has if a PR has so many reviews, then it can be automatically merged and things like this. We do not have any policies like this, and so we would probably need to discuss in the community whether we want anything like this, want to set such standards, or if not. Until we figure this out, I would suggest that we just continue using the label positive review, and still in plain text in a comment write reviewer : and then the plain name, the full name of the reviewer, and that is something that our release manager scripts will be able to handle. So there's a question how to access those reviews on the current PRs. So that is, again, it's a question of the permissions, configuration of teams, and so on. And I believe there's already an ongoing discussion. I saw something. I haven't been able to go through all the messages that came through my inbox this morning. I think there has already been some discussion on the relevant issues here of the organization. This is something we figured out.
Other question.
All right. Any
Other question.
Xavier has a question. Xavier, go.
So my question is the following. Can you hear me? So my question is, if I want to collaborate with somebody else on a ticket, what is the best, the right thing to do? Do we create 2 forks or just 1 fork? What should we do?
So I didn't catch that. So you have two people who want to work on the same issue?
Yes, on the set. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So there are various ways to do this. So without any elevated permissions, you can. So if one person opens a pull request, then you can fetch the other person's pull request branch. So these are the special refs that GitHub manages. So it's described in our transition guide how to fetch them to a computer, and then so without coordination, without permissions, the other person could just open their own pull request and push the changes that include their changes into that one. If this is more like a team project, you can as well add outside contributors to your fork. But I think this only pays off if there's a kind of sustained collaboration. And it's also something that I would, for example, recommend if you are in Europe and for example, you do something in the context of classes, and so there are kind of legal issues that would bar students in their function of people who are taking an academic class to access GitHub directly. That's kind of also the workflow that I would recommend. That maybe in part also addresses the concern of the people who are unable to create a GitHub account. You couldn't just collaborate on branches using any system, and then there just needs to be someone who pushes the resulting branch to GitHub.
So this is definitely not the end of the question list, I guess, but we'll stop there because of time. So the discussion can continue on Zulu, can continue on Sage Table. Let's thank Matthias for the talk.